Hey adventurers, today is going to be in a book tag. This is the personal library tag. I was tagged by David Wiley to do this one, so I'm trying to get back into doing some tags. I've got a backlog of them that need done, so I figured might as well start doing some of those. So we'll get right into these questions. Do you have books around, or do you think of yourself as having a personal library? At the moment, I don't really consider myself to have a personal library, but I am working towards that direction. It's books around because I don't have a good, like a really nice bookshelf, bookcase that I can have for a personal library. Eventually I do want it to turn into a more personal library rather than just books around. What does a collection or personal library mean to you? For me, it's just having a bunch of books. It's physically owning them so that you can use them to reference, to look at, to read, to reread, whatever it might be. Probably books that you would reread at least once, but they're all books that you enjoy for some reason more than just, okay, I read this once and I don't ever need to read it again. Or else they're classics. I love having classics even if I've only read them once, and even if I don't ever intend to read them again. I like having them because they're classics and they are the type of books that you expect to be there. I also like having several different editions of certain books like Lord of the Rings, because to me that's important too, because each different book, each different edition of them gives you a slightly different experience when reading it, and it's really interesting in that way. So that's kind of what I get from a collection or a personal library. That's kind of what it means to me. What is your personal library for? Well, kind of self-explanatory. It's a personal library. It's for me. And again, I don't quite have it yet, but it's going to be a place where I can go. I'll probably have a way to sit and read in my personal library, whether that's a chair or whether it's just in my room or whatever, but it'll be a place where I can sit and read, where I can be surrounded by books and not have to worry about technology essentially and life around me. I can just go sit and read for a little while, go pick a book off a shelf. I'll have lots of books on my shelves that I can pick and choose from, whatever it might be. So that's kind of the idea behind a personal library for me, is it's a place where I can personally go for myself and get a book to read. Where is your personal library? Contained to a single room or spread out all about the house? For me, it's contained to a single room, my personal library is, but because my family has lots of books, I have no issue going and taking a book from their shelves if I want to read it. Again, my personal library isn't really a personal library yet, but I have all the books that I personally own are in my room, and I would like to have, when I have my own house, I would like to have a dedicated book room for filming YouTube videos as well as being my library, or else just have a library and then have another studio space somewhere else that either's got one bookshelf or something. I don't know how it's going to work, but I will eventually want to have my own dedicated room for a personal library. How do you organize your personal library? Right now it is organized, one shelf is fantasy, one shelf is everything else essentially. And that is kind of not mixed. I usually try and keep authors together, and I usually try and keep topics together. So I have a lot of my classics in one area, I have a lot of my mysteries in one area, westerns in one area, and it's just, as you go through you can see those sections of the shelf. So I guess kind of genre. I don't really keep them ordered alphabetically or by author, or anything like that. It's literally just what fits in the spot next or better, or what looks best, and I don't really have it like a smallest to largest or anything like that. I don't really care about that. I want more of the genres to be together and all of an author to be together if possible. Do you keep track of your personal library? If so, how? I don't actually keep very good track of my personal library. Other than that, I know that it's all sitting on the shelves in my room, and I would like to keep better track of that. I'll probably eventually have a spreadsheet or a list of some sort somewhere where I have every book that I have in my personal library, that as well as have the ones that I have read and the ones that I haven't read, and stuff like that, or the ones that I am ready to reread or whatever. So it's a list of just, probably also include the last time I read them type thing. But it's just I'll just eventually have a list of all the books that I have, and whether that's online or in physical list or something, I don't know yet. I haven't really worked that out yet, and I don't really care to at this moment because it's not important at this moment for me. How do you decide to add a book to your personal library? Really, if it catches my interest, I'll buy it. Or that's not even exclusively true. Lots of times I'll read books on audiobook because it's cheaper, or it's easier, or it's faster, or I don't think I'm going to get to it physically for a long time because I'm reading other physical books or whatever, so I'll read them on audiobook. And most of the time when I read them on audiobook, I don't have the physical books. But if it's a book that I like, or if it's a book that sounds interesting, I will buy it. And that's also depends on price and depends on how much I'm willing to spend on it, and if it's in good condition. Lots of varying factors. If I'm just trying to collect the series, like Wheel of Time, I haven't read all the books yet, but I'm just trying to collect the entire series so that I can just have them to read through when I get to the next book type thing. And so it kind of just depends on the book. For the most part, I don't really have a way to decide what book goes into my personal library. It's just, do I want this book right now? And if I do, then I'll buy it type thing. When it's time to cull your personal library, how do you decide what stays and what goes? So I don't actually have this issue because I haven't had to cull my library yet, but I suspect what'll probably happen is books that books that I've read and don't like, I'll get rid of. That's an easy one. Books that I have multiple copies of, but I don't really care if I have multiple copies of, I'll probably get rid of the multiples. Stuff like that. So and that also depends. Like, I don't really care if I have multiple copies of Stormlight Archive or something like that, but because I have the first 2 books in paperback and the second 2 books in hardcover, I might get 2 more in hardcover and 2 more in paperback, just so I can have the complete set for each of those, just because, it's kind of one of those things that I might just do it because, but I don't really care that much one way or the other. Does your personal library have books you haven't read, may not read? Yes, there's several books that I haven't read yet. Most of them are ones that I really do plan on reading at some point, and then there's a lot of them that are just, so I've mentioned them before, but my works of by this author, I have 7 of them. I can't remember them all, but there's Alexander Dumas, Victor Hugo, and another 5 of them that I can't remember off the top of my head. But those works of, I may or may not ever read them, but they were such a good deal. They were kind of expensive, but it was such a unique thing that I saw, and the collection of them, of the works that was so worth it to me that I just bought them. And whether or not I ever completely read through them or read anything from them at all, I don't really care. I just wanted the collection, and I probably will read through them at some point. But there's books like that where I bought to have the book, not necessarily to read the book. Books are meant to be read, and I absolutely will read them, but I don't so much care with some of them if I read them. Like, they're not pressing for me to read. I just wanted to have the book to own. What do you think about the idea of a 0 TBR? I'm not sure exactly what this is. I think it might be you don't have anything that is specifically to be read, but it is just if you feel like reading a book, you read the book. And that's kind of, in many ways, how I look at things. I have a TBR in many ways in that if I hear about a book that sounds interesting to me, I'll write it down. And that's just so that I don't forget, because there's so many books out there that it allows me the ability to, as I'm shopping or as if I'm browsing a bookstore or something like that, and I see a book and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting, then I can go scroll through my list of books that I want to read at some point, or that sounded interesting to me at some point, and be like, yes, so this is one that I've heard about, that whoever I heard about it from made it sound interesting, so I want to read it. That type thing. I don't so much keep a massive TBR as I do these are just some books that sound interesting to me that I might want to get to, and so I don't want to forget the titles of type thing. And the last question is, how do you feel about or towards your personal library? I think I've kind of gone over this a little bit through some of the other questions, but to me, I'm not quite happy with it, in the sense that it's not to the point that I want it to be at eventually when I have my own personal library. But at the same time, I don't feel bad about it because I'm not there yet. And I've got so many books that I want to read that I haven't read, and I'm constantly getting more books. Not consistently, but constantly getting more books. So I'm perfectly happy with where it's at. That's not to say that I don't want it to be in a different place in the future, and that future isn't here yet, and so I'm not worried about it. So those are all the questions from the personal library tag. I'm not going to tag anyone on this because I don't know who's done it, and I'm just kind of trying to get through a backlog of these tags, so I'm sure I'll probably be tagging people as I go through them, and some of them not tagging people in some of the other ones. But anyways, thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. Please like and comment and subscribe if you haven't already. We will see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.